Janet, so nice to see you again.
You too. I feel like we're old friends.
I know. Well, you kind of give me the inside scoop of what's going on in Mazatlan and Mexico overall. I love all the articles that you send me. Today we're gonna talk about get an update from you how life is in Mazatlan, and kind of like what's been changing over there, what you've seen change over the
Okay.
years. Um, since for those of you who don't know Janet Blaser, she's an author, and also I interviewed you, gosh, probably a couple years ago now, and I'll put the
Hmm.
link up here for those people who want to see that interview about how she got to Mazatlan and your fabulous apartment and all that kind of stuff. But before we start to kind of get into it, maybe you can give a little succinct um, life story, basically, on where you
Okay.
live, where you're originally from, and why did you end up moving to Mexico?
Okay. I've been here for about 17 years. Um, I came from Central California, from Santa Cruz. And I think there were two main reasons I came. I was looking for kind of a dream, an adventure is what I wanted to do, and a simpler way of life. And I turned 50. Oh, here's the other thing. And I was a reporter, I was a journalist, and the internet had kind of thrown everything topsy-turvy in that world. So I was looking for some other way to make a living. And I came to Mazatlan and saw an opportunity because there were so many foreigners visited, and I started a business here. And and then I've been here. I sold the business. I retired. I have a big community of friends here, and it feels like home. It's been a long time, so this definitely feels like home. Well, I guess it is home. It doesn't feel like home. It is home.
Right. Well, 17 years is a long time. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
it
know
is.
how many,
It is. Yeah.
a lot of people haven't lived in the same place for 17 years, so that's really
I
amazing.
was just thinking about that
And
the other day, wondering if it's the longest time I've lived anywhere. So I thought about that too. And I have three grown kids that have families of their own, all in the States, but they were all grown when I left, and they were very encouraging. So that was a big piece of how I was able to leave.
was it scary for you to leave the US and kind of jump in, or were you more just excited
It's
about the
totally
opportunity that kind of
scary.
laid out?
It was totally scary. Leading up to it, leading up to leaving, I was all caught up in the excitement and packing and figuring out what I could bring. I drove. I drove from Santa Cruz to Mazatlan. I didn't know anybody here. I had come on a vacation, a random vacation, and just, I don't know, fell in love with it or something. And I packed up my car and, had last dinner with my kids, and I drove off, and I don't think it took an hour before I was sobbing in the car, thinking, this is a mistake. What am I doing? I felt like it was ripping my arm off to leave my kids, or at that point, they were like in their early 20s, and they all lived in the same town. And I kept wanting to turn around, and I would get off an exit and call one of the kids, and they'd be like, no, this is your dream. You should go. You should go. And I'm like crying. Um, and then, so it took 2 days to get down to the border. And then when I crossed the border, I had been taking Spanish classes, and I thought, I've got this. Right? And I drove across the border, and I couldn't read anything. I couldn't read signs. I mean, I hadn't studied the immigration language or customs documents. I didn't know any of that. So I think that you couldn't even call it culture shock. It was just like the shock of being so lost, catapulted me into having to be present in that moment. So there was no time to think, oh, I made a mistake, because whatever it was I was doing, had to do it in that moment. And I think it was the evening of or the afternoon of the first day that I was driving in Mexico. There was a guy on a motorcycle, obviously going a long distance because he had big panniers and backpacks and stuff. He was staying near me on the highway. There's nobody on the highway. The highway through Sonora, through the desert, is really empty. There's no one there. So he was staying near me, and I felt he had a California license plate too. And so at some point we both got off to get gas and we chatted, and he was going to South America. He was working for some nonprofit, and he was going down there to receive a shipment of wheelchairs or something. I don't know, like the Lions Club or Rotary Club, something like that. But he spoke Spanish, and so I said, "Can I stay behind you?" So I drove behind him all the way to Mazatlan, and every time we went through a toll booth, he would pay my toll, and he would tell the attendant, "Oh, this is for my sister behind me. This is for my girlfriend behind me. This is for my mother behind me." And then I'd get up there and they'd say, "Oh, your husband just paid," or "Oh, your cousin just paid," or whatever. It was really, really sweet. So I always thought of him like as an angel. Because I was, as much as I had to be in the moment, it was scary because I didn't know what I was doing, basically. I thought I did, and it was like sink or swim, but no one threw me in. I threw myself in.
Sounds like the beginning of a romance novel, actually.
No, I wish. No, we got to Mazatlan, he went off, I went off. That was I don't even know what his name is, the angel.
But it's amazing because that's thinking of that now. I don't know if I could trust somebody to do that. I don't know. That's amazing.
Well,
You know what I mean?
what was he gonna? What was he gonna do? We were just driving. It was either. At least he spoke English. I don't know. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. I think, it's amazing. It's just like a sign that, there are kind people out there, and I think that's great.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And I had prepared as much as I knew to prepare, but there was so much I didn't know that I didn't know. Like I had 2 phones with 2 different phone plans, and neither of them would work in the desert driving down. Neither of them worked. And he had this great big satellite phone, so I was able to call my kids, right? The Spanish I had learned was pretty useless. It was not the words I knew. How do I get to the library? That's not going to help me. And then I got to, because I had come on vacation, and so I had rented a house before I left to start that month. I came on a vacation in April, and then I returned for 6 weeks in the fall to see if I could live here. I took a leave of absence from work, and then I came down here. I had a little apartment I rented. And I just explored. Would I be comfortable? How would I feel? Well, everything seemed fine. So when I was there at that point, I rented a house to live in when I came back for good. So I got here and drove to the landlady's house and got the key and went to this house. And I had rented this gigantic, like 4-bedroom, 2-story house because I was so used to living with my kids, my 3 kids. I didn't, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. So I stayed there a couple days and I was like, this is ridiculous. And then I started looking for another smaller place, and I just, the landlady let me leave, and I just lost the deposit. So there was a lot of mistakes. Let's just put it that way, there was a lot of mistakes. But once I got here to Mazatlan, which is where I wanted to be and where I felt this connection, there was some connection I felt, then I was able to handle the mistakes and the unknowing and the confusion a little better than when I was on the road.
Is there, I don't know. I mean, it was a long, it was a long time ago, and I'm sure, I love the fact that you said that you made a lot of mistakes, because people will make
Totally.
mistakes, right? And I think that we need to allow ourselves that room to make the mistakes. I mean, I feel like, nothing is going to be perfect, and I think that's part of the adventure as well. But are there kind of big things that you're like, you know, make sure you bring this, or don't bring that, or know this, or at the very least know that, if you were to do it all over again?
I don't know if I was going to do it all over again, but one thing I do tell people who, often people write to me and they're thinking about moving to Mexico, but they don't want to be in a city where there's a lot of expats. They don't want a big expat community. And I always ask them why. because as a starting off point, to be in a city where there is an established expat community, where there are people that speak your native language, where there are others who started out not knowing anything like you are, and that can give you solid, tested advice. That's really valuable. If you go move in some tiny little village somewhere where nobody speaks English, and you might think, oh, I want to live a simpler life, but the reality is you want running water, right?
Right.
The reality is you want to be able to go to some sort of a bank machine and get out cash when you need it without having to drive an hour or an hour and a half. Of course, you want to be safe. You're going to want access to certain kinds of shopping because we're used to certain creature comforts. And you can say, no, I don't need that anymore. But you know what? Give yourself a few years and you will. You'll think, no, I just want ranch-style Doritos. The weird things that you realize, if I could just have that again, So, when people ask me for advice, I that's one of the things I always say is, start in a place. Find a place you like, go and visit or not. I only came here one time, but make it as easy for yourself as you can, because there's going to be challenges and confusion in ways and places and situations that you cannot even imagine. So if you have a base and you have some friends and you have people you can ask, how do I do this? What do I do? How much should this cost? It's going to help you get started, So that's one of the things. What would I do differently? I don't know if I would do anything differently. I don't know. I maybe something will come to me as we're talking, but I don't know what I would do. I would have more money.
That would be a nice thing.
Yeah,
If you can orchestrate that, right?
Yeah.
But you managed to live pretty frugally. Your monthly expenses are, well, I know that they've gone up, of course.
Yeah.
Um, so, so on a monthly basis, roundabout, how much, and whether you use yourself as an example or your friends or whatever, like how much do you need minimum, do you think, to live comfortably over there as a single person?
People ask me that all the time too. I think that it depends on who you are. I was a single mom. I never made a lot of money, so I was used to being frugal in certain ways and used to living simply. But I have friends and I know people that have a lot more money. I know people that get 5 times as much Social Security as I do. Plus they have a pension. Plus they have a retirement fund. And they live in a beautiful brand new condo. They travel around the world. They live in a whole different way. The wine they buy costs 3 times the wine I buy. So wherever you live, I think anywhere in the world, whatever your budget is, we're going to live right up to the edge of that, right? That's kind of how we do it. I didn't think to write out what my expenses are. But I can say my rent was $420 when I moved in, and that was 3 years ago, and it's gone up 10% every year since then. I have a lease, and so that's in the lease. So now it's 9,500 pesos, so it's like 500. Yeah, it's 500. But what's making
the US?
Yeah, 500 US. But what makes the big difference now, if people have paid attention to this, is the changing peso dollar conversion rate, because it was 2 to 1 and better for years, for 7 or 8 years, and now all of a sudden it's not. So confusing to talk about converting money, isn't it? My rent on paper is 9,500 pesos. Okay, let's say it's 10,000. Let's say it's 10,000. When the peso was 2 to 1 or more than that, I could take out $500 US, the equivalent from the bank, and that would be $10,000 pesos. Now I have to take out $570, $580 to get
the peso's
10,000
gotten a lot
pesos.
stronger.
Yes. So that's it for someone like me on a pretty strict budget. That's a lot of money, you know. And it's not because the rent has gone up. It's because of that conversion rate, and we just got so used to it being 2 to 1, 2 to 1, 2 to 1. You know. So that's it.
So
My
that's really
phone bill.
important.
It is, and I don't know if well, yeah, it is. My cell phone bill is about $15 a month. Still, it's always been like that. 15, 1-5. And I get.
That's obnoxious, Janet.
Pardon?
That's obnoxious.
And that's, I get, I don't know how much data I get, but I never go over it. It gives you free Facebook and WhatsApp and unlimited international calling 24 hours a day. So that's $15 from Telcel, from the big monopoly here. Wi-Fi in my house is the same cost, $15 a month for Wi-Fi. My water bill is about 85 pesos, which is about $5 a month. The electric is going to start going up in the summer because I have air conditioning, right? But it was never more than $25, the electric. Last year, at the height of the summer months, normally it's about $11 a month for electric.
Wow. How big is your place?
Pardon?
It's a one bedroom?
My place is really big. It's really, no, it's like 3. It's really big. I think in the video I say it's 1,100 square feet, but I think it's more like 1,600 and 1,600 square feet. And the third bedroom is connected to the kitchen. It's like a maid's room, so I use it as a prep room for the kitchen. So I don't think of it as a bedroom. And someone came over the other day and said, "Oh, you have a third bedroom," and I was like, "Oh, I guess I do." So it's a real, yeah. So it's what's happening here in Mazatlan, if it's okay to segue into this, is that unlike many other cities in Mexico that are experiencing this influx of digital nomads and foreigners coming, and rents are rising because of that, what's happening here is that it's national tourists. It is Mexicans coming from other states, from landlocked states, to come to the beach. And suddenly, during COVID, it started, Mazatlan has gotten this reputation as an easy to go to place for families. It's not expensive. It's not like Puerto Vallarta or Cancun or Cabo where it's really, really pricey, right? So busloads, thousands and thousands of people come every weekend, Thursday to Sunday. I mean, there's so many people here. And so anybody that has anything they can rent as a vacation rental is doing that. So that's what's driving the rents up. Because if you have an extra bedroom in your house, and a lot of people use Airbnb, but they also just put a little sign on the window, vacation rental. And people come on I don't know, they don't rent in advance or they rent it for next time or whatever. So that's what we're dealing with here is that anybody that can they can make in a 3-day weekend as a rental what they would get for a month, right? So I lucked out finding this apartment. The landlord is from a family that's been here in Mazatlan for generations. They own a lot of property. They're not looking for a lot of money. They're really nice people. And so it's a reasonable rent and a good location, and they're receptive or responsive when I need things. So I feel really blessed.
No, seriously, that is amazing. I mean, even
Right.
with the exchange rate fluctuating and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is.
That's a
It
gift.
is. And I think people that are looking to come here and maybe retire here or live here or try it out, they look they think it's long-term because they think 6 months is a long-term rental. But for a landlord, that's not a long-term. Landlord wants a year, and if you want to pay like what I pay. And the rent I pay is because it was unfurnished. I don't know how people watch that video and don't hear me say that 7 times. Unfurnished doesn't just mean, I know, doesn't just mean there's no couch and rug. It means there's no appliances. There was no ceiling fans. There's no air conditioner. There was no hot water heater. So I had to buy all those things. So there's an investment when you have a lease. There's an investment, and so does it even out if I paid double that rent? I don't know, but if you're planning to stay for a long period of time, then it makes sense to have those things. So when people ask me, what I say is start with an Airbnb or start with a 6-month rental, pay whatever it is you need to pay. So you have everything, right? You've got linens, you've got pots and pans, it's in a safe place. Anything goes wrong, they're going to deal with it. And then figure out what part of town you want to be in. Figure out how you want to live, You want to live in a condo, you want a little house, you want a little yard, what is it you want to do? And there's nothing wrong with renting before you buy. Absolutely nothing. Because the humidity here is really, how shall we say this? It takes a lot out of a building. There's a lot of maintenance along the coastlines in Mexico. And I think people don't realize exactly what that means. The things that will rust, like the rebar inside the walls will rust, and then the walls will fall off. Basically. They call it salitre. They have words for it, but basically that's what's happening, is that the rebar inside is rusting, and then the cement or whatever it is, the ladrillo is gonna fall off. I can't hold on to it anymore. So it's just so different than things you would encounter in the States, So take your time. As I tell people, take your time. You don't have to buy right away. Rent for a year or a couple of years. There's some people, a couple that rented across the street from me, from Portland, and they sold their house in Portland and they moved down here in October. And first they were all gung ho to buy a house, and they started looking around, and then they thought, maybe we don't need to do this. And I think they pay a little more than me. Maybe they pay 11,000 pesos, $600. It's not very much. So they decide they're going to rent for 3 years while they get to know the town and see what it is they want. And they're completely happy. They're buying furniture they like. They've made the apartment livable for their standards. Like, it was worth it to them. As an example, they wanted a dishwasher. In these old buildings here, there's never a dishwasher. So they paid to have not only to buy one, but to have it built into the kitchen counters. Have them all cut out and replaced or whatever. With permission from the landlord, because it's important to them. They figure we're going to be here 3 years. We're going to pay to have this done. It's going to pay for itself in our happiness and satisfaction. So I think maybe the lesson inside of all of that is that you're learning, when you move to another country, you have to learn to think outside the box. And you may not even know what those boxes are. But when you're confronted with them or you're in the midst of it, it's perfectly fine, or perfect actually, to look around and think, oh, well, I could try to go that way, but what happens if I try this over here? We're going to think outside the box and come up with a solution that works for us now in our lives.
That's so great. That's so true.
Words are
How
wisdom.
poetic. You must be a writer.
Sometimes I am, yeah.
And I think that's, and dealing with different situations that, pop up as life, does often. And I know that you had a recent health scare. So I'm going to switch over a little bit in terms of your experience and what you ended up doing. So what happened? This was last year, I believe, right?
It was, I had the procedure in October, but the issue was probably going on in the summer, and I was oblivious. I had sometimes pressure in my chest. I'm a healthy person, vegetarian most of my life, I exercise a lot. I drink a couple glasses of wine a week, if even. I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't eat processed food, I don't drink soda, all these things I don't do. Okay. So, but I had this funny pressure sometimes. It never occurred to me that it could be my heart. It just never occurred to me. All right. So, but then one night, the pain woke me up, and so the next day I went to the best hospital in town, and had a stress test and an EKG, and it really hurt. It really hurt. I was crying. It really hurt. And the doctor said, "Well, it looks pretty good." He said, "But you should have a cardiologist look at it." So I didn't have one. So I went to another cardiologist who looked at it, and right away he said, "You've had a heart attack." He looked at the squiggly lines. He said, "You've had a heart attack." I'm like, "When?" He said, "I don't know. You've had a heart attack. There's major blockage, and you either need stents or you need a bypass, and you need to take care of this right away. And until you do, don't do anything. Don't go up any stairs. Don't exercise at all. Don't do anything." And there was a hurricane coming. Of course, this is like a telenovela, right? There's this big hurricane coming from the south, and it was supposed to get here, and the airport was closed, and da 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 da. So it's like I can't go anywhere. And I talked with this cardiologist about the procedure, and he said, "If you can do it in the States, do it in the States. There's only one doctor here." This is what he said. I don't know if that's true in town that can put the stents in. He said, "If you can do it in the States, do it in the States." And that felt more comfortable for me, because even though I've been here for such a long time and I speak okay Spanish, it's really in a medical situation. I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know what the attendants were talking about. I don't know those words, and I was freaked out. So I realized that, okay, this is not going to work for me to have a health emergency in Spanish. I can't. It just doesn't work for me. All right. So that was a new piece of information. All right. So the hurricane's coming. I can't go anywhere. I'm like sitting on my couch doing nothing. Right. Freaking out. And then I flew up to the States where I had Medicare and went right to the emergency room, and they took me right in, and I ended up staying in the hospital for 8 days, and they placed 2 stents. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, and then did you do your recovery in the States, or you came back down?
No, I stayed there for I think a week or 10 days, and then I came back, and I thought, okay, how like I said to you before, as I'm apparently falling apart piece by piece, what what am I going to do, right? I don't want to live back in the States. I couldn't afford to live back in the States, and I really love living here. So I thought, how can I make this work? How can I? And I talked with my son about it. How can I make a sustainable healthcare plan? That's the phrase that stays with us: sustainable healthcare plan. Okay, so I thought, okay, I need to find doctors and specialists that I trust and that I can work with here in Mazatlan, and then have the same kind of stable up there, but for my everyday thing in it. So that's what I've been doing. So I found a great cardiologist who's board certified. And how did I do that? As expats in an expat community, you have your close circle of friends, and you ask people, what did you do? What did you do? And as we're getting older, we're having health issues, and there's been people that have died, spouses have died. So I asked some of them and got some recommendations. And then I I went in and had consultations. I paid to have a consultation with the doctors to see how I felt about them. And were they board certified? I wanted to see that. And so found a cardiologist, got a dermatologist, gynecologist, same thing. I have an appointment with a GP next week. I've gone to talk to 3 so far, and it wasn't a good fit. So that's what I'm trying to do, is make a sustainable plan for down here.
And you're doing your homework. I think that's
Yes.
really kind of a key piece, right? Just don't go to any Joe Schmo because Facebook told you to or whatever.
Yes. Okay, good. That's a good point. So what I had done up to that situation is that, you can go down here. Almost every pharmacy has a little doctor's room on the side. There's a doctor and a consultation room, and for 50 pesos, which is like $3, you can go in if you've got a cold or a UTI or you need a couple stitches or something simple, and they do that there. They'll give you a prescription, and it's cheap and fast. You don't need an appointment, right? That's common. So for everyday things, that's what I've always done, but I've never needed any kind of specialized care to this degree before. And so that's a whole nother world. So I feel completely comfortable with getting that kind of simple medical care down here, and getting tests. Like I just had a bone density scan done, and it was like, I want to say it was $8.
Wow.
I know.
Right.
And I went in to get a
That's amazing.
mammogram, and they said, "Oh, we're having a sale. Do you want to have the bone density scan?" I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Sale on bone density scans. That's
Yes,
awesome.
it was a women's package, and and it's a lab, a big chain it's all through Mexico, and it's also in the Southwest. I think Arizona and New Mexico, called Salud Digna. So they have low prices and really modern equipment, and they give you the results. So I have those images and I have those scans. So I have that, so I can take it up to the States to my primary doctor. I can keep it in my files to see what's happening every year.
So that's great. So
Yes.
that's amazing. And the fact that it's so affordable means that a lot of people will have that done, which is the most important thing, right? Because
Yes. Yes.
it's
So
about
I
prevention.
think for medical care in Mexico, what I would say to people is that don't believe these things you read that, oh, it's free, the government pays for it, because it's just, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably isn't, and do your homework, do your due diligence. And if you don't speak enough Spanish to ask the questions you need to ask, then pay somebody to go with you. There's all kinds of people that are fluently bilingual that you can pay to go with you to a doctor's appointment or to you can have a tour of a hospital. At one point I did that thing where I moved really rurally to a little village with 6,000 people, and I lasted about 18 months. And one of the things I thought I researched was, is there a hospital nearby? And in the nearest towns in two directions, like say half an hour in each direction, there were hospitals. Well, turns out neither of them had even an x-ray machine. It was just like a handful of doctors, and they had like some kind of, trauma units, but none of that. So if you needed an x-ray or an MRI or anything like that, you had to go an hour and 20 minutes to Puerto Vallarta. So I didn't ask the right questions. Yes, there was hospitals, but what resources do those hospitals have? And so that's what I encourage people. Ask. You got to really take the questions deeper, step by step, in ways that you wouldn't in the States. And if you're young enough to be able to get international insurance, I would say do that and keep it. I'm past an age point where it's worthwhile, but yeah, if you can do that, why not do that?
That's great. And then, so do you have health insurance in Mexico?
No, because I used to, and then I let it lapse, and then I'm too old. So I'm 67.
Yeah, so I had heard that after 65, it's very difficult to get health insurance there, but that there are international plans that you would be eligible
Well,
for.
there's international travel insurance is only for if you're traveling, not if you're really living there. But some private insurance will cover you out of the country. Private insurance, I'm talking about. I mean,
So you pay everything out of pocket.
Yeah. And I had a friend, a close friend recently, who she had a hernia operation. She needed it for a couple of years, and she finally said, okay, I'm going to do this. And she explored the different hospitals. She found a doctor that she really liked, felt comfortable with, whatever, and paid for it out of pocket. And it was about $8,000 when it was all said and done with all the different fees. Would it have cost a lot more in the States? Yes. Was that a lot of money to have out of pocket? Yes. And people say, oh, the Mexican government has this free insurance, IMSS, but that insurance and that healthcare is meant for poor people. I don't want to say welfare, but it's meant for the poorest of the poor. The government provides it for poor people. And if you're a foreigner, you're going to have to pay something. But even if you're but it's not meant for us. It really isn't. And the type of medical care you're going to get, you're going to go to a general hospital where you have to bring your own food. You have to buy your own medications. They will tell you what you need, but you have to have someone else go out and get it for you and bring it back. Even pain meds. It's just, again, it's about, you got to take the questions deeper and deeper and deeper. There's some, big international living sites that talk about, free medical care in Mexico, but that's a fallacy. It's just not true. And I'm sure that people, they come down here and they think that that's going to be the case, and it's not. It's not. Sorry, that was kind of down the dark.
No, that's definitely very true. I've heard that across the board, people think it's free and it's not free.
Yeah, no. Why would it be free? Of course, it's not free. No. So this is my new thing. My new platform is make a sustainable medical care plan for whatever it is you need. Here's another one. Okay, so I take meds for my heart. Right, I'm one of these people, 4 medications a day. I hate that. I have a little pill box thing, right? But I have to do it. Okay, so I get my I go back and forth to the States every few months, and I get the prescriptions filled for 3 months. And I was about to run out, and I was like, do I have to go all the way back? And I thought, let me just get them here. So I asked my cardiologist, and he said, of course, I can give you a prescription. He said, but don't get generics. You want to get the name brand. I'm like, sure. 30 days worth of the name brand medications would have cost more than double what 90 days in the States would have cost me.
Wait,
it was so expensive. It was, I know it's a lot of math. Okay.
I know.
1 pill a day for 4 pills a day for no. Right. Let's just say it was like 4 times the cost. It was so expensive. I couldn't buy it. I just said I need these, and she got them, and she started ringing it up, and I'm looking at the numbers on the screen. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. They were so expensive because they were name brand. So I don't know, is that a NAFTA thing? Is it, I don't know, Pfizer doesn't want the drugs? I don't know what it is. But so that's another thing you hear, medicine is so cheap in Mexico. Some of it is and some of it isn't,
Right.
So
and I've also heard that you
do your homework. Believe half of what you see and none of what you hear, except for me. No.
And then also not to go to just any Joe Schmo, pharmacy, that you should go to the kind of the bigger chains, Farmacia Guadalajara. There's a few of them, but that you need to be careful and smart about it.
Yeah. Cineloris is a big chain, and they do really reliable generics, and that's where I've gone in the past. Plus they have that funny dancing mascot. But just because it's my heart, I just, I couldn't bring myself to do that, because the cardiologist said no, get the name brands, and he's not making any money off of that, so he doesn't care.
Right.
So.
Wow. So as we kind of wrap this up, you've written a book, which is also like a great anthology for women who are looking to move abroad. Oh, and there it is.
Well, what I tell people is backwards, right?
No, it's not backwards.
Okay. What I tell people is that it's not just for women and it's not just for Americans. It was just a catchy title, and I'm a woman, so I know women, so that was what I started out doing. But it's basically, they're collected essays of 27 women, different kinds of women who moved all over Mexico from all different parts of America, and their experience. And it's not so much why they left as how they left. Again, why we left sounded better than how we left, right? And I think it's a couple years old, but there's still a lot of valuable information about things that everybody will deal with. What do I do with my pets? What about all my stuff? How do I get there? What is my family going to say? So it's available on Amazon as an ebook or a paperback. And besides being informative, it's really fun, I think, because everybody's very different. Okay,
I agree. Well, I'll put the link down below if anybody wants to grab that and grab a copy of it. And we also have a free webinar. It's called Dream Retirement in Mexico for those who are looking to start that journey and start the planning, thinking about what they want to do. We talk about, some of the more popular places to move to Mexico, to the basics of how to buy real estate, and then some healthcare options for foreigners. Talking about some of the things that we actually talked about today. Janet, so if anybody wants to follow you or reach out to you, how do they do that?
I am on Facebook and Instagram as the Janet Blaser, because somebody else is Janet Blaser, and it's a psychiatrist in California. Anyway, it's not me. I really make an effort to answer everybody who writes to me. So if you have a specific question, it might take me a couple weeks, but I really do go through all the questions. And I write pretty regularly for Mexico News Daily, MexicoNewsDaily.com. And if you Google my name, I'm all over the place writing about expat stuff, really. But I want to say one more thing. Risa's webinars are great. They're really informative. They're full of down-to-earth, researched information. She's a delight to watch, and I would say definitely watch the next webinar if you're thinking about Mexico at all.
Aw, Janet, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. Well, thank you so much. As always, it's always fun to talk with you, and I'm sure we will do this again.
Okay, thanks.